Big shout out to Vestibular first for making this post because it took me to an article that kind of proves something that I've been thinking about for a really long time. So it talks about this specific article, so you can look it up. It's called Augmented Ocular Vestibular Evoked Myogenic Potentials in Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome. So that's a lot of really unfamiliar words, but what it really means is that there's a really specific part of the vestibular system that becomes dysfunctional, and it could be associated with POTS. So here's the bony labyrinth of the inner ear, and it has two parts. You have the semicircular canals, which is most associated with vertigo, but you have this part here called your otoliths, and the otoliths are made of two structures. You have something called the utricle and something called the saccule. And the differences is that the semicircular canals detects rotational acceleration. So what happens whenever you move your head in this rotational manner? And the utricle and saccule detect linear acceleration, which means when something is moving in a straight or translational plane. Professor Carrick, the godfather of functional neurology, actually spent quite a bit of time hypothesizing that utricular problems were heavily associated with symptoms associated with TBI. It's actually the concept that led to the development of treatments using things like the gyrostim for off-vertical axis rotation. So if we know that the otoliths are really responsible for linear acceleration and translational forces, then that means that the otoliths are really important for managing how we detect gravity. So our otoliths have all these hair cells, and we have these crystals which are known for causing BPPV, but they're actually supposed to be in the otoliths. Whenever we translate, these crystals move and these hair cells deflect, and that helps us determine which way our head is actually translating in space. Our reference frame for gravity actually changes when we turn our head in different directions. So when we see that the person's head is bent forward, then the force of gravity is actually pulling down on those hair cells, and our brain interprets that as, oh, my head must be pointing downward because gravity is pulling me in this specific direction. And for a long time, I've hypothesized that a POTS patient has a dysfunctional relationship with gravity, and that's probably what's responsible for some of these orthostatic symptoms, but I never really had good research to kind of back that up. So we know in POTS that the baroreceptors are impacted by some forms of autoimmunity, and those baroreceptor inputs are supposed to fire into the lower brainstem called the rostral ventrolateral medulla, and the RVLM has an input into the IML, which is where it houses our sympathetic nervous system. But we also know that the otoliths have a vestibulosympathetic pathway that is actually much faster than the baroreceptor pathway, and it also goes into the RVLM and the sympathetic nervous system. Baroreceptors and otolith organs will change the firing of these muscle sympathetic nerve activity, which will then in turn affect our ability to vasodilate and vasoconstrict our blood vessels. So while this doesn't prove that vestibular therapy is going to help people with POTS, it does give us a therapeutic rationale for why this could be a good target for rehab.